Hello, everyone. Welcome inside the Astro studio. Today, I am so happy to welcome my friend Tiffany. The Astro studio is where you get a peek behind the scenes of the work of the astrologers that we all love to learn from. I'm your host, Sarah Al-Harar, and today I'm joined by Tiffany Harelik, my friend, the brilliant astrologer. What? That happened. Okay. Always in the beginning, I should look blah blah. Okay, I'm going to start, erase, and
No
restart.
problem. No problem.
Three, two, one. Hi, everyone. Welcome inside the Astro Studio, where you get a peek behind the scenes of the work of the astrologers we love to learn from. I'm your host, Sarah Al-Harar, and today I'm talking to my friend, the brilliant astrologer Tiffany Harelik. For those of you who don't know her, Tiffany is a professional astrologer, a spiritual development teacher who's based in Texas. She's also the founder and publisher of Spellbound Publishing. She's authored several books from cooking to yoga to astrology and beekeeping, which is one of her passions and talents. She's a master's in health psychology and a master teacher under Lisa Williams. She's, of course, the creator of the amazing Wise Skies digital astrology calendar, which I love, use every day, and recommend all day long. And you can find her on her website and all her many, many offerings on tiffanyharlick.com. I'll put all the links at the bottom of the video. So, hi, Tiffany. Tiffany. Thank you so much for being
I'm,
here.
I'm so excited to be in the Astro Studio. I think what you're doing is amazing. It is a legacy project. It is so cool for all the new astrologers, all the OG astrologers. I absolutely love this studio. So thank you for letting me be part of it.
I'm so happy you're here. And you've been like such a close friend for a little while. So you've heard me imagine this project. You've witnessed like the whole project coming to life. So I'm really happy that you're here and that we get to do this together. Yeah. Yeah, so give us a little bit about your like how you came about to being an astrologer. Who were you before? Like, did you always know some astrology? How did that come around for you?
It's kind of funny. So I'm Scorpio Sun, Scorpio Moon, and I've always had the interest of right, like the taboo section of the bookstore, right? And so I grew up in Austin, Texas, and it was the year 2000. I was riding my horse. I did 3 day eventing, and I had just gotten done riding, and I went to one of my favorite little bookstores that had some taboo topics and spiritual topics in it. And there was a Taurus giving a talk on astrology. And so I kind of wandered in at the right time. The incense drew me in, and I just got to the back of the bookstore at the moment. And I sat down and I just needed to hear every word that he said. And he taught very slowly. So, of course, I signed up for this really long program that just kept going and kept going and kept going. So I kind of stumbled into it, but I knew it was for me. I was young, I was 20, and it was the first time that I felt like somebody looked at me and saw who I really was. And I felt like I could sink into my bones for the first time in my life. I had had a lot going on astrologically prior to that moment, including a Pluto-Uranus conjunction that I had a near-death experience with. It occurred in my 12th house. I had some really a lot of things that I felt like not that I felt unseen. I just didn't know that I felt unseen until I felt seen, you know? So astrology was a huge gift in that department early in my life. Yeah, and this astrologer taught us how to hand cast charts. Very old school. We weren't using software or databases. We had a paper, an ephemeris that we were using. And so it just the biggest gift he gave me was taking me to the bookstore and getting me started on my library and picking authors that were very credible and knowledgeable and respected in the field. And so for that, I'm very grateful for how I got started.
Wow, and so this person gave you your first reading as well as some classes?
Yeah, yeah,
That feeling that you speak of, this idea of like you didn't know, you didn't feel seen, but then when you get to get seen by astrology, like that feeling is really something amazing. I felt that also, I think some form of that when I had my first reading with Deborah. It was like I always, the image for me is that she was giving me a picture of my back and that I had never seen my back but that I could like recognize myself and be like, oh, that is me.
yeah,
Wait, let me see. You know, if you see a picture of you walking from the back and you're not used to seeing it, you're like, oh, is that me? Is that how I walk? You know?
yeah.
That reflection of being like capable of like saying, yes, this is me. And also it's a new side of me.
Hmm.
That's
Yep.
crazy. And so how long did that last?
That class, I mean, probably a couple years I was studying with him. Unfortunately, it ended in in an uncomfortable way. So once that ended, I stepped away from astrology for a bit. When you have an unfortunate experience with a teacher, it can put a sour taste in your mouth for a while. But I had all of those books, and so I just started on a self-study after that. And it's funny looking back because I would write initials by whatever, Mercury and Leo or whatever the little thing I was reading at the time. And I'd put people's initials because I was trying to teach myself through different personalities. And now I have no idea whose those initials were because it was so long ago. But I encourage people that are starting out and using paperback books to go ahead and write more than just initials in there. So you'll be able to look back and remember. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that was like what, 20 years ago, 20 something years,
25. Yeah.
25 years ago. Wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so can you tell me a little bit about like, yeah, you said you had a near-death experience when Pluto was, how old were you then?
So I was 14, and it was actually when my progressed sun moved from Scorpio to Sagittarius. I only actually looked that up about a year ago, but it was to the day that my progressed sun moved from Scorpio to Sag. It was in my 12th house, and we were on a mission trip. We were going to Mexico, so very Sagittarius, right? The pulpit, the traveler, the truth seeker, the adventurer, and then Scorpio, death, right? Rebirth, something else. And so there was this Pluto-Uranus conjunction in my chart at simultaneously progressed sun moving. Yeah, so it was a big turning point. I was just 14. We had just moved. And there was a lot of changes going on, and I was in an area where people couldn't really answer my spiritual questions. They hadn't had that experience, and it wasn't like we were searching stuff on YouTube and there were thousands and thousands and thousands of stories. It was very much a hush hush topic that I didn't understand for a really long time. Yeah.
And that was like that you had sort of like a spiritual experience happen with that.
Yeah, totally. We had this car wreck. We didn't have an airbag. We were ejected from the vehicle. It was horrific. It was in far west Texas, and there were no cell phones, so we would wait for somebody to find us, and then drive back and make a phone call, and then drive back and care flight and hospital and all of the things. And so, the mind, the aura protects the body, the physical body. And so I teach a class called the intuition anatomy of intuition. And so there's ways that the spirit, aura, chakras, physical body, mind work together to self-preserve. And so in that moment of such great pain, such confusion, such intensity, what can happen is you can have an out of body or near death experience. And so that was my experience, right? So you float up outside of your body and you start to see orbs, and you start to see a different spiritual experience behind the veil, and you can't unsee it. A lot of psychics have that experience of head injury or trauma or wounds that crack you open to the other side in a way. And I make the bad joke, like, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that's the way that you access your spiritual gifts. But I was thinking about that this week. Like, what would have happened if I hadn't gone on that mission trip? What in my life would have cracked me open? Because otherwise, it was just like a totally normal thing. Would I have had a horse wreck? You know what I mean? Like, would I have fallen off? Because the astrology was there for the cracking open, so it would have happened in some way. But that's the way it happened for me. And at the time, there just weren't a lot of answers for being able to see souls, being able to understand the percentage of souls and the God life spiritual experience on the other side. So I just didn't have answers for a while.
And so that must have been isolating in a way. Like, were you having like experiences throughout like your teenage years?
I was I guess it was isolating, but it's kind of like you're living with sunglasses on and then somebody takes them off and you can't unsee it. So I mean, I have curly hair, so I just manage it that way. I can see spirit, so I just manage myself that way. And it was different. I didn't talk about it so openly and freely for a long time. But then I had a friend that identified what I was going through at much later in life, and she said, "I think if you had a little bit of training, it would help you." And so now with my Virgo midheaven, because I went through a lot of spiritual development training, I can break it down in a way that I can understand it, and it's not so foreign. It's a lot more sciencey than it is woo, and I feel like it's totally totally normal. We all have these five senses. Most of us are born right with these five senses physically that extend metaphysically. So all of our senses extend into the metaphysical world, and we aren't commonly taught how to access those, train those, strengthen those. And that experience is what really cracked things open for me. And I just continued to learn about it and fine tune it so that I could teach others too.
Wow. And so when you were 25 and you kind of like stopped astrology for a moment, put down your books, then did you continue like doing some spiritual development and searching into that? Like what was the next thing for you?
The next thing was my teacher at the time said he looked at my chart, which is 12th house heavy, and he said, "What do you want to do with your life? Like you have some decisions to make." And at the time, I said, "I just want to help people." And this like sigh of relief came over his face, which I'll never forget. And he said, "You are at a stage in your life where you are building your toolbox. Go gather, go build tools, go get what you need." And so the next thing that I did was I got my master's in health psychology. I was really impressed with that program. It was here at Southwest, which is now called Texas State University in San Marcos. At the time, it was a very new program, and they were blending mind, body, health, and wellness. So they were looking at both psychology and physical health in a science way. And I think, thrived. There were some big ups and some big downs during those couple of years, but I was really impressed with the program. I got to study energy in a medical environment, and I got to study resonance repatterning the frequency behind thought and in terms of as it relates to physical health. And so that was the next tool I got. Yeah.
Beautiful. And what did you do with that? Did you practice? What does one do with a master's in health
In
psychology?
health psychology, you
Yeah.
just feel like accomplished, I think is what,
Is
because
this
I was
what
I didn't go in the counseling track. Like a lot of my cohorts, my peers went on and got counseling degrees. And I'm like, I don't need that. I wanted to use astrology, right? So I didn't need a particular degree to tell me what I wanted to do with it. And so I just, started weaving astrology back in. I studied herbs. I studied other areas of natural medicine. And my first little newsletter was printed. It was so cute. It was such a labor of love, but I would send out this like paper newsletter all about the herbs and the astrology and the health for that month. And yeah, I just was kind of playing with the tools, getting used to it, and starting to take in clients, creating my first intake form, doing things like right, just getting my skills that I learned from the master's program, but using it in an astrology world. Does that make sense?
Wow, and it's a really long time ago in a way. Like when did you graduate? When did you get your master's?
So, okay, was it 2006?
It is, and I mean it's a long time of practicing astrology and doing it in that way. Like, okay, so you're saying like in 2006 you had like a newsletter that you would send by mail, by snail mail.
Yeah,
Wow. And
I
so
know.
you were already like professionally presenting yourself as an astrologer in 2006. Like if people came to you and were like, "Hi, Tiffany, what do you do?" You'd be like, "I'm an astrologer."
Yeah, I'd be like, I practice astrology and I help people live their healthiest life. And uh, right, like I don't know what my elevator pitch was at the time, but I had a business card, I had a practice, I saw people in person. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow, because it is a long time ago,
Mhm.
2006. That's it's almost 20 years of professional practice.
And I was so young. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. And bless all the young people. I want to go to the oldest person in the room. I want to find the oldest person to learn from. So it always was so humbling and honoring that somebody would think that I might provide some answers for them that had so much more life experience than I had. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah. No, I understand that. Like the Capricorn in me like resonates with what you're saying about like age, but there's also something to be said about yeah, the value of knowing your your craft. That doesn't have to do with like knowing life.
Mhm.
Knowing how to do astrology is not necessarily the same thing as knowing how to do life, question mark, So
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
overlap of these things is interesting, but yeah, no, but you were. And so if you think about like, okay, your newsletter then compared to your newsletter now, like what type of things would you cover? What do you feel about it looking back?
So, looking back, it was called Your Healthiest Life. And so I was covering more like herbs than the astrology forecast. I would throw in the astrology forecast, but it was in like a couple of paragraphs. It wasn't what I do today. It is much longer winded. And so back then I was mostly trying to get people healthy, um, right? Like really trying to start from the gut microbiome level and help people with their biochemical health. Because if you're having problems, right? If you're having problems with what do people go to astrologers for in the beginning was love and money, right? Like, who am I going to marry this guy? When am I going to get rich? Like, am I in the right job? What's my purpose? We all have these same questions. And so to me, it was like none of that's going to stick because my health psychology right, taught me that if you don't have that energetic frequency behind any of this, you're going to keep repeating the same problems. I'm going to have a great client list because you're just going to be doing circles, right? So I don't see people often for the same problems. I go ahead and refer out. And I knew that even then. I'm like, this is not going to be beneficial for you unless you change something. And so to me, like that body level was the place to start. I was taking yoga at the time. Later in life, I did get my yoga teacher certificate. I just really knew that without the physical health, the mental questions, the spiritual maladies weren't going to get solved. It all works together, right? Because also by the time you have a physical expression, there's already been some kind of emotional situation triggering and manifesting in the physical. So it all was working together. But I guess if I could say like something that is significantly different is I was much more focused on the physical health aspect at the time.
Hmm. And what about your sessions? What were your sessions like then?
I was doing applied kinesiology, I was doing muscle testing, I was doing natal chart reading, I was offering suggestions for herbs, mostly just detoxing. And yeah, so just coming over to my place for an hour, I had a candle going, right? I wasn't recording anything. People would take notes. We would leave phone messages for each other. And yeah, there wasn't Venmo. What was I there? I wasn't taking credit card. I must have been taking cash. That's gotta, or checks. But there wasn't like the ease that we have now, right?
No, for sure, for sure. Like
Yeah.
all like brick and mortar.
Yeah.
Right? It's brick and mortar astrology. I had no idea that you had like such a serious astrology business 20 years ago. Like
Yeah.
this is really something. And I mean it speaks about you. Like you are so resourceful and creative. Like it's really something. You're a sight to behold. Like Celeste and I always laugh. So Tiffany, Celeste, and I have this chat friendship and projects that we do together. So if those of you who are watching don't know, we every year we get together to do a year ahead forecast, which is like one of our favorite projects to work on together. And we're very dear friends in real life. And a lot of the times it's just me and Celeste gasping at how much production you just pour out of you. And so you were always kind of like entrepreneurial and figure shit out type of person. Was that always like even as a kid, like are you just that person that just is doing a
I
lot?
think so, yeah. I have Sag rising and I have Mars and Neptune in my first house, and I like to show up early and stay late, and I love the adventure of life. Yeah, I think I've just always been a little much. I had a person that was very close to me for a long time, and she said one time she said, Tiffany, you're 24/7. And like in a way that was like, you're too much. Well, I know. I don't know why. I have a lot that is wanting to happen through me. And so I'm willing to be a vessel to allow for that creative experience and that creative expression. And thank God I know, human design and astrology, because I do not put that on my children, my family, my lover, I don't put that on anybody else. I realize that I'm wired in a way that feels energetically intense to a lot of people's schedule. And the older I've gotten and the more fine-tuned I've gotten in my niche, the more I have been able to relax. But I've never been bored a day in my life. I wake up, I think of projects that I am excited about doing. If I get done with that project, my hands are busy. I'm knitting, I'm crocheting. I'm not just like watching a movie. I'm over here typing up a paragraph about something. I'm not just sitting in the sauna, I'm actively meditating. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of energy that wants to burn. And so I allow for that and rest when I need to.
Yeah, I wonder if it has to do also with the near-death experience, question mark. Like the idea that somebody who is like so close to losing it, like all of a sudden would want to make the most of it and squeeze every drop out of the lemon.
Yeah. I think that's a great observation. I mean, I have the gate of extremes in my human design, so I'm also like going to the edge all the time. Like I'm not just studying yoga, I'm studying yoga in India. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not just like whatever I'm doing, it's to the extreme. I'm in the hot air balloon. I'm doing the skydiving. I'm jumping the 6-foot fence with my horse at the Olympic barn. I'm not just on a trail ride. I want the blue ribbon, right? Like I do crave that spice of life, that the full experience that we can have, the full human potential. And I think that's what I love about astrology in terms of I practice Western astrology and evolutionary astrology, and the way that I interpret that is what's your evolutionary potential? And don't you want that, right? And don't you want that? So we all go through seasons. So I don't want to come across as like I'm on all the time. I go through seasons of stillness, of questioning, of sorrow, of course. And grief is part of my life too, right? So we have had some significant losses, but I don't share about it often, and I don't spill it out emotionally. I try to take responsibility for my energy, especially in the public, like the social media, the platforms, the online platforms. But just because it looks like a lot, right, doesn't mean that there's not also these seasons of quiet and still and wait. And that is something that I have had to fine tune for sure, because I want to go, but there are seasons that we need to be quiet. We need to be still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it feels erratic and unpredictable, but actually, if I sit down and look at it, it is predictable. When I have these highs and these lows, like moments where I'm just like bursting out and just producing, 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 and then big drawbacks in. And so this is how it feels for me, like high tide, low tide. But when
Right.
it is low, I'm going to be really low. But I think I've witnessed you being like high tide pushing at some times, and where I'm like, hey, Tiff, this is a long time to be on the high tide. And I'm all the way over here. Ahoy! You know? And you're
Yeah.
still going, 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 you know? Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's true. We all like navigate the energies differently. Um, but it is pretty remarkable because you also, so not only you have, I mean, can you list some of the things? Because of course you're an astrologer, you're an astrology teacher, you teach a lot of workshops in school, and you're launching a program right now, and you have your calendar. You're also a beekeeper with 550 pounds of honey on your hands at this moment.
Mhm.
There's like so many things going on simultaneously. You're still um doing some concert stuff sometimes. You're like, "Oh yeah, I'm handling a concert this week." I'm like, "What? Are you?" Because you have this experience also of event organization and all of the things that you do. You're like a really like a jack of all trades and a master of many things, actually.
Thank you. Yeah. I I can talk about all that. Did I miss the question part?
I don't know. No, it's a
Okay.
question mark.
Yeah. Dot, dot, dot. Yes. So all of those things, beekeeping has blossomed. And so this has been an interesting tracing of one of the moon family cycles that when I started beekeeping, roughly, well, within my beekeeping program 18 months ago, I started really trying to help others, teach other people. And then 2 moon cycles later, someone approached me about purchasing their business here recently. And so we started talking about it. And we just, like last week, we went out to check the bees. We thought we were going to see they never are what I think they're going to be. Like some psychic, right? Like I'm always like, this is what they're going to be doing. And they're not doing that. So this cycle, we went out to check the bees. We were thinking we had left plenty of food on in the winter so that they could make it all the way through. You don't want to take honey out during that time. Well, what we found was we didn't take enough. We didn't take any. We were letting them all have it. But this created a situation where they're now honey bound, so they don't have a place to lay eggs. And so we had to harvest. That was the good steward thing to do. And so we took the honey. Now they have room. They can lay eggs. They can keep their life cycle going. They still have plenty of honey. Lord knows they do. But they're going to continue to make more. And so we have this problem of abundance, which is amazing. And so that definitely set me back a little bit this week because I had not scheduled in harvest these 100-pound boxes of honey with your 2 hands. Because I've just been doing it as a hobby, teaching other people, having some extra around the holidays. And so this has kind of taken a life on its own. And people are like, why did you get into beekeeping? Any beekeeper, I think, would share the sentiment that the bees kind of call you. It's not like you wake up one day and you're like, I want to be a beekeeper. There's a sense that help is needed. There's a sense that more can be learned. And my quiet meditations in the hive have helped me slow. You cannot be anything but present when you're working with 10, 20, 60, 100,000 stinging insects that are flying all around you. You need to be present, and you can't go in angry, upset, lonely, tired. You need to go in, you can't go in hyper caffeinated, right? You just need to go in and do your yoga and do your work and breathe slowly and move like a Tai Chi master, and work with nature. And so to me, that's a huge legacy that I can offer, is to help our foodways, our soil systems, people that want to grow their own food or want to understand how, our foodways work in an organic way. There's a lot of misunderstanding in terms of chemicals and treatments in the world of beekeeping. And so that's a huge part of what I do. And it's just happened in this moment that we're interviewing. It just happened to really, really blossom. There are other music festivals that I still work with. Part of my corporate, I guess, life, right? At some point in my corporate life world, I was working for Google. I worked for Lollapalooza. I worked for Austin City Limits Music Festival as an event producer, as somebody. So Viva Big Bend is the one that I still work now, and it's in Far West Texas. And so we do 6 cities. We do over 70 acts in 4 days in 6 cities, and they're spread out. So that's my Virgo midheaven. I just love it. I'm like, give me the spreadsheet. So, and that is also a legacy project because people leave changed. People. It's not just for the attendees. The musicians leave changed, right? That it's music is an interesting community healer. So that's a big part of it. But it's only a couple weeks out of the year that really takes my focus. And of course, you mentioned my astrology practice, the calendar that I write. I usually take 2 months out of the summer to write the next year. And I absolutely love my time doing that. It's my time with God, it's connection. It also slows me down. It helps me think. I fine tune it. I improve it every single year. I work hard for you guys because I want you to have not just like, oh, what's the vibe today, but an understanding of your cosmos and the world and the flavor that you live in, right? So publishing, I take on different books. I write books throughout the year. Um, I set a new record last year for writing in a day. I had over 30,000 words in a day, which was incredible. But yeah, I enjoy these legacy projects because I feel like I'm helping either people reach their potential, or I'm expanding what's possible, or we're connecting in a kind of a soul deep way for yeah, the evolution of the human journey, right?
Hmm. And then, yeah, I mean, that's already like a lot of stuff and ways to contribute to your, it's so funny that you keep on referring to your Virgo midheaven because it's like, yeah, ways to contribute, ways to make the community better. Like, how do you improve community? How do you just help everyone. Um, but and so tell me a little bit about like psychic development and
Yeah.
that part of your life, because this is also like something that you're very like active in, and you're a certified teacher, and that's also like part of the work that you do. Can you like, yeah, explain to me a little bit what you do there too?
Yes. So, psychic work, right? I have changed my view on that over time. And so I'll give you a little like t bullet points throughout the cycle of it. So, my first medium teacher was Janet No Havoc. She lived in New Jersey, and she lived close to the area of like the first place that mediumship took place at all was in Western New York. So the history of mediumship actually starts here in the States and then travels over to Europe. So I have a history of mediumship class if you want to go into the nitty-gritty of it. But Janet was a phenomenal woman. She was a Catholic nun and a medium. And so for the first time, I felt safe to explore that space. And she wrote a book called Where Two Worlds Meet. It's a great resource for people that feel mediumistic. And the Catholic, I'm not Catholic, my mother was, but I really trusted her. I trusted her because she was talking to a source that I knew was true. So just like there's bad doctors, just like there's bad astrologers, just like there's bad psychics, there's bad mediums. And so when I'm teaching psychic development, the very first thing I ask my students, which is day 0 maybe of my 40 Days of Spirit project, um, is who are you talking to? Because the world of spirit is vast. And so if you don't know in your heart who you're talking to, if you don't trust your version of your higher power, if you have some things to work through, like we all do on the healing journey, that's really where you have to start, because otherwise it becomes a projection of what you're trying to heal on somebody else. So you need to know who you're talking to and develop that relationship. So that relationship requires time. And for me, meditation, prayer. For me, early in the morning and before bed. It's accessing those alpha states of consciousness intentionally, right? And developing a relationship over time. For me, it's staying in my chosen form of scripture, staying in written words, music, right? Increasing the frequency. It's keeping my body temple healthy and clean. These are like the foundational blocks. And so my Catholic nun mediumship teacher would come into the class with her Starbucks, and it was like this whole other personality that I just loved her. And she would say, right, there's always three people, there's three personalities or energies involved. So there's you, there's the sitter, and there's spirit. Spirit's always going to be there, right? So that leaves two people to screw up. So if the sitter or you are in your anxiety or in your fear or in your hungry, angry, lonely, tired, there's going to be some kind of miscommunications. But what she taught me really was also about conveying the message and allowing some room for creativity. So who are you talking to? Because you want to solidly anchor in that and not just be open to any spirit coming to you. I think that's dangerous. I think it's inappropriate and it's just kind of sloppy and gross. And so we are all psychic by nature, and it is a responsibility of your own energy to work to develop that in a way that you're really proud of, right? So for a while, for a long while, I was doing psychic readings, and they were great. You know, you feel good. They get something out of it. People grow, they move on. You get a call back. Oh, what you said came true, or this, or this, or this. And then you kind of feel like, oh, that's special. That's wonderful. And over time, I feel like that the last couple of years, some of my marketing has been don't hire a psychic, become one. And the reason for that is I'm more passionate about helping you develop your intuition so that you can have a real relationship with your creator, because there's so much noise, right? There's so much more noise, so much more data, so much more information, misinformation, things to sift through, things to decide. There's data in excess. And so if I can help you to enhance your intuition to work for yourself, I think that's a better stewardship of my gifts and abilities, is to help you help yourself rather than to teach you to read for somebody else. Like it feels like disempowering. It used to feel empowering. It now feels disempowering to read for you. I'd rather teach you to read for yourself. And that requires that you have that relationship with that higher power. So there's the situation that got me thinking about this happened probably 10 years ago. I was getting a massage, and I knew it was a friend of mine, professional masseuse, and she I was just kind of in the zone, and she said, "Gosh, I lost my wedding ring today." And I was like, do you want me to try to find it? And she was like, okay, And so I asked permission if I could remote view her day. And I did. And so I remote viewed her day, and I said, I see a parking lot. It's in the gravel. There are, what do you call like those railroad tie things? Like you would pull up to a big log, and there's ivy or vines growing in front of it. And she said that she had done an outpatient visit, that she knew exactly the parking lot. And I was like, okay. So she goes and she gets her husband. They go to the parking lot. They find the ring. Okay. So this was a pivotal moment in my psychic development journey, because who knew? She didn't know where she lost it. I didn't know where she'd been that day. Some benevolent force knew, right? And was that bad? I mean, was that bad of me to step in and find it? I don't think so. you know? So I'm really curious, like, well, if I can remote view that, what else can I remote view? If you're into remote viewing, I want you guys to study Russell Targ. He was a psychic spy for the CIA,
How do you
and one of
spell
my
that?
favorite, Targ, I believe, Russell Targ. His book is Limitless Mind. I mean, I'm sure he has several, but that's like my favorite. If you're wanting to study remote viewing, that is the resource for it. It's what I teach from. And he's incredible. Um, and he's like part of the history of remote viewing. Uh, but so one of his quotes is, I was a psychic spy for the CIA and I found God. And so at the time, it's not like I was a godless creature, but I definitely wasn't like, oh, God told me where your ring was. I remote viewed where your ring was. So I had to struggle with my relationship with my creator, with spirit. And so I hope that I inspire people that are learning their psychic senses to struggle with their relationship with spirit, with their creator, because that will block you, right? That will block you from, or you'll just get a whole lot of misinformation and be confused for a while. So either way, you'll stumble across it. But it's like we have all the senses, we have all the abilities. Some of us are naturally born to ride horses. Some of us are naturally born to play soccer or play the flute or play the guitar. But once you strengthen each of these psychic skills, you can play the whole symphony, and then you can call on any instrument you need at any time. So during that process, because I got pretty good at it, because I was strong, an athlete in that with that skill, I was also working with law enforcement to do missing persons work. And that was a really big part of my life that I'm really proud of, because we did find people that were alive. And that's not always the case. You know, a lot of times by the time you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you do the diet and you do all the things and you go to the doctor, and then the last person you go to is who? The chiropractor, right? And they should have been the first person you went to, and things would have been a lot better. It's the same thing. You know, you have a missing person, you freak out, you do all these things, and then you ask the psychic, right? By this time, the likelihood of finding them is pretty low. So for anybody to get to this last rung and to be helped and to be reunited with their family, right? Like that feels like I'm delivering a sense of purpose there. So there's many ways you can work with psychic development, but at this point in my journey, I feel like the best use of it is for yourself, to develop your own skills, to become a good steward of the life that you were given, right?
This is so, so, so beautiful and important. Um, it's something also that I struggle with astrology a lot. I think that one of my intentions when I give readings is um, to point that astrology asks questions and doesn't give answers, that you give the answer that you want it to be, that the question will be there present in your chart, but that also I want to keep intact my sovereign agency and my client's agency. And I work very hard at keeping that intact and never be the one to give them an answer, but
Hmm.
rather facilitate the questions that can make them come up with their own answers and their own meaning and ascribe their own meaning to their experience. Not using astrology as a filter between them and their agency, but maybe as a, yeah, facilitation of your agency. So there's something about what you're saying that makes me think that it's similar.
Hmm.
Also, I mean, also many, many thoughts about like that question that you had, like who was the helper? Who showed? What showed? Um, it's very interesting. Like, okay, if it's not the remote viewer viewing, if it's not her remembering, what is the
I mean,
third?
she didn't know. That's what fascinates me. Otherwise, I would have just psychically read her that she knew.
Right.
It's information that's attainable from your auric field, right?
It's not like you are like a dog that can smell the ring and then it would be the scent. string. Like it's like there's no information. Beautiful.
Right.
Yeah. And so this guy said, yeah, I worked for the CIA and in the end he met God. Like that, what was the point of it all? In the end was to meet God.
Right. And I think, I mean, for him, right, for me. And so that's why I like that type of approach to quantum physics, to spirituality. If it points me back to a closer relationship with my creator, I'm on track. I had a pre-birth dream. I don't think I've ever told this story publicly. Um, but I have a pre-birth memory. And this is, it was made stronger once I had the near-death experience. But the pre-birth memory was of God in the sky saying, I need somebody to go and it's time to love. It's time to love. And I have this pre-birth memory of like raising my spirit hand and being like, send me. I want to go to the love party. I'm ready to go. And it's like, and then you're down on earth, right? And so anytime I have a teacher that is teaching how to love, right? And that can be tough love. That doesn't mean ooey gooey love. It can be very strict Saturnian love. But when there's an essence that I can feel that is the tone of that pre-birth memory, and I feel it in the strangest places. There was I take people on these spiritual retreats, astrology, yoga retreats, as do you. We got to go to each other's retreats sometime and be served by each other, the juiciness of that. But one, I was in this Catholic church again in Santa Fe, and the children's choir was singing this song, this hymn that I had never heard, and it's along the lines of, "Do you know the sound of your Savior's voice?" And that in that moment, I was like, I do. I know the frequency, I know the sound, I know the texture, I know how I feel. I know what when it changes for me when I'm in meditation. I know that it's not all the time. I know that it's not dial-a-dead and on demand. Oops. I know that but I do know it. And I know that voice and it's different than mine. And so psychic development is discerning that inner voice between your voice and that inner voice. And so we really break it down very simply through the five senses and strengthen. We have exercises to strengthen each one. So it's just a skill that really anybody has that they can play with. But that pre-birth memory, anyways, that when I know that I'm on the right track, when I have that attunement rolling with me, and it's yours might be different. I would assume it is. But that's something for you to find and for not for me to read for you or attune for you or tell you what it is, right? That would be disempowering. And so, yeah, that's how I guess things have shifted.
And so that's a big change for you. When did you see that like cement in your practice? Like how, when was that realization? Like, oh, I've changed. I'm changed.
Um, it's been within the last couple of years. I think there's such sorrow. Forgive me if this is not rehearsed out of my mouth, but there's such sorrow when people come to you with stupid questions, with heartbreaking questions, with questions that do not matter, right? Like that they've missed the mark completely. That they're worried about something that is not that important in the grand scheme of their soul's calling. And so to me, it's like, how can I quit that part? And how can I quit that part is entertaining these conversations about should I break up with him? Am I in the right place? Like all of these little things. Like what is the core wound? And then how can we grow from there and keep evolving? And so I think I just had enough readings where I was like, that was the last one. These are not the right conversations to be having. I'm not helping getting anybody closer to God with this conversation. They're stuck in an emotionally drunk situation where they are high on the conversation, the ups and downs of the emotions that they're feeling. And I'm a sober person, and so emotional sobriety, financial sobriety, spiritual sobriety, these are things that the world won't teach you, right? The world will teach you how to market this and how to sell this and how to break up and how to stay together. The world will teach you all that. But if you want some kind of spiritual response, that's going to require a different muscular system that is not easy, right? So when did that change for me? I think I just had the last emotionally drunk conversation I could stomach, and I just wanted to pivot to talk about the stuff that really matters. And it wasn't hard. I'm not afraid to refund people. I'm not afraid to refer people. And I mean that nicely. Like, I'm not helping you. Like, let's get you some help here. So a lot of times I'll offer to do sobriety work, like emotional sobriety work for free. And I'll get through the first conversation with people, and hardly any of them call me back. It's because we're not quite ready to do that level of work, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
they're not right. They're not the right clients for you. And I think there's like something really powerful about like maybe in the beginning of a practice, you want clients, you want so many clients, you
Yeah.
want the opportunity to do your craft, and then you start to sift through what's the right relationship, what are the right clients for me, and where can I do my best work.
Yeah.
I think there's also like inherently a thing with like the word psychic and like how people go to psychics. It is a disempowering relationship inherently, and in which one person has the magic answers and the other one
Right.
is blind and
Right.
Ian has the perception and the other one is completely blind. So like I hear you, it creates this like tension. And then the thing that's interesting, I love what you said, is like they're not asking. So okay, it's very layered what you're saying, Tiff. Hold up.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I love it. Hold up. So there's many layers in that. Is like one of the layer is that not because psychics can read energy does that make them a emotionally intelligent, spiritually intelligent, mature, or anything, right? So they could
Right.
completely just like also like reading their own vibes, and we can
Right.
put language to
Hmm.
things insofar as we have the language because we have experienced them. So
Hmm.
if you ask of questions that are of spiritual nature, and we can spend some time defining that also, but like what does it mean when you're asking of questions from the place of the eternal soul?
Hmm.
If you are asking a question to spirit, you are talking to eternal soul and consciousness. And so, if
Yeah.
you want to see things from the perspective of eternal soul and consciousness, some of the things of down here are going to be irrelevant, immature, and
Right.
it's almost like an instant way to pull you out of your bullshit, also, is to see things from this perspective and be like, okay, get over it, you know?
Right.
Or even enjoy that, which is like another layer to it, you know. But if the person doesn't have the language, the spiritual language, the spiritual experience to really share to the client, and if the client doesn't even have the spiritual language to hear it,
Mhm.
then what the fuck are we talking about?
Right. Right. And
And
then
it's
why
a
am I
girl
taking your
talk. And
money?
it's
You
girl.
know?
Should I break up? He's a toxic asshole. Oh, yes, girl. Break.
Right.
Then it's just girl talk. Then
Right.
it's not of spirit nature, right?
Right.
Which is a thing. With astrology, so where that becomes also interesting is that with astrology, we could keep it like super technical and never get into an astrology that is of the nature of spirit. You're a
Mhm.
Taurus, you should nap, you're a Sagittarius, hop on a plane, everything will be fine, right? There can be like a very, and there's also very possibility to find yes or no answers. When am I moving? You'll be moving July 4th. It's like we could give you dates, we
Mhm.
could tell you places, we could, you can kind of like make it rational with astrology. But I
Mhm.
find more and more, I'm personally, I'm personally less interested, more and more intending to that part of the nervous system of my clients,
Mhm.
right? A lot of the work that I do, I feel like the clients come to us, and this is an image I use a lot, like they have tangled necklaces.
Hmm.
And they give us like a mess of tangled necklaces, and we'll spend the next hour just kind of like detangling and being, here's the Mars timeline, here's the Saturn timeline, not everything is everything. We can separate them and kind of like see cleaner. Um, but there's also a depth of conversation that some people just don't want to have.
Right.
And then that forces me to pretend.
Hmm.
To pre and I don't want to pretend anymore. I can't do that in full consciousness and do this job if I'm gonna have to pretend
Right.
like I'm not having a completely mystical experience. And I think you know, like that
Well,
this
okay, so this is actually an interesting point. So when I am doing readings, like, or when I'm teaching, like, you have to validate something for somebody before anything else out of your mouth is going to be believable, right? So I like to insert a little woo. So science, so astrology, part science, part spiritual. I like to insert a little woo. So in my readings, like the first thing I do is I'll go connect in, of course, with permission. Really, the first thing you should do is set an intention and relax your client. Walk them through a little meditation, soften up the auric field. And so I go in, I connect with them, and I give them something in their timeline from their past, not like a it's more like okay, I'm seeing an energy block around the age of XYZ, 16. Okay. And they already know, to your point. I don't need to tell them what happened. I don't need to read their bedtime storybook. Like they know, yes, 16 was an incredibly pivotal age. Now, I'm not also being an astrologer and I'm picking seven because of the Saturn cycle. I'm actually going into the timeline and then I'm drawing out a key emotion. So there's this age and this key emotion that relates to it. Then we go into the astrology part of the reading. This part ends up getting talked in again about over here. So we make a full loop. So somebody feels completely seen, past, present, future. But I feel like without that sense of early validation, the rest of the conversation, it's like anybody could say it. The reading that taught me that is I was in a mediumship reading for a woman who, bless her heart, her father had passed away and she was getting married. She was a referral. I didn't know her, never met her. We were on the phone. I wasn't seeing her. And I gave her all of these validating pieces. They used to listen to John Denver and drive around in the station wagon, all of these things. And she's crying and I'm crying. And I said, your dad's going to walk you down the aisle. Okay, but it's important to me because who doesn't want that? And who wouldn't have wanted to say that for that person, psychic or not, astrology or not? Like, that's just a very normal thing to say. And I said, I know that this just sounds like something somebody would say. So I'm going to ask spirit for evidence that this is real communication from your father. And I said, well, I see a sand dollar. And she's crying and I'm crying and I'm like, why are we crying? She said last night they don't live near the ocean. They cleaned out their fireplace. At the back of their fireplace was a whole sand dollar. She had no idea why it was there. And I'm like, again, who? Who knew that? Who was the seer that allowed for the healing to occur, for a woman to walk down the aisle with her dad, And the questions that we have with weaving psychic work, astrology work together, right? That was a power. And have I ever seen her again? No. And thank God, I don't really want the repeat clients. I don't want the people that are emotionally just not able to move through it, right? So yeah, it was just there's really powerful things you can do to weave different parts into your reading to be both science and spiritual. I think I hijacked your question. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. You don't, they're your questions. Hold up. It's really brilliant. And so, wait, so, do you blend the two when you do a reading, or do you have like really separate like astrology readings and then, psychic readings, or
I
you do
used to do them
psychic,
really separate. I used to do them really separate, and now I just don't. I just do them all together.
you do it all together. It's like a one thing channeling, and so okay, so walk me through that. So you said, okay, so you're gonna set up the intention, make sure,
First,
yeah,
mhm. That's so important because you get a dopamine hit and you get the yes button turns on and your brain decides to perform towards that intention, right? So it's my intention to connect for you clearly, concisely, accurately in a way that you can understand, right? To bring you peace and confidence and clarity. That's not from me, that's not from this world, but from the next. And so I have a whole spiel of an intention. That's part of it, but it turns me on, meaning my brain and my psychic and my astrology side, and it also gets you in that zone as well. And so whatever your intention is, say it, right? Say it out loud, and that will create the environment for the reading to go really well. You'll get no's during your reading, right? We all get skeptics, and so people are like, no, that doesn't sound like me. And you're like, okay. Or like but what it does to the reader is it cuts the connection off completely. Now, the reader is like, why am I even here? Am I even a good astrologer? Or they'll get defensive. Well, yes, it is. It's in your chart. If you're not experiencing it now, you'll experience it later. And then there's like some weird control manipulation defense thing that happens when the reader is like, no, that's not me. And so another, I think, really great part of developing the skill of looking at charts is the ability to bounce back from the no. Because if you have lost your connection to spirit in the course of this reading, how do you quickly get it back? How do you quickly get it back and not care what they say? And I have some stories about that, but I feel like I've taken too much story time for you. So I
not
don't
at
want
all. Really, really not. Please
okay.
do take as much story time as you can. This is really fascinating. Yeah, I'm deep in. Tell me the stories.
Well, I mean, so some of the no's, right? Some of my favorite no stories, and I'll give you two. One, I was working with a woman through an astrology reading, and we started with some psychic because I wanted that validation piece that spirit is here, spirit is with you. There's a force here that you can trust. There is a higher power. Somebody knows better than you about, you know what I mean? You can surrender to this spiritual force, right? And so I'm giving them this validation, and we're going through, and I'm like, I'm seeing sunflowers, and she's like, no. I'm like, mm, okay, sunflowers everywhere. And she's like, not at all. No sunflowers anywhere. I'm like, okay. What about, I'm feeling like there's a bracelet, like a charm bracelet. And she's like, nope. And I'm like, okay, I'm seeing like four-leaf clover. There's something about lucky and then, but also a charm bracelet. And she's like, absolutely not. This is at the beginning of the reading. I'm like, do you want your money back? And she's like, no, let's keep going. So we keep going. The rest of the reading, I have to regroup myself. I replug in. It makes sense. We get off the phone. An hour later, she's like, bring. And she says, I drove up to the birthday party where she was headed. The decor was all sunflowers, sunflowers everywhere. She has a bracelet on that says lucky on it. It's not a charm bracelet, but you know what I mean? And she's like, I can't believe it didn't click. So a lot of times people are in such deep grief that they can't hear what you're saying to piece together. And it takes a little while to absorb, or they'll have what we call psychic amnesia, where they just can't hear what you're saying is actually accurate. So you might not even know until later. Another one is I had a woman who I said, I'm seeing the words refund on an envelope that went to the wrong address. And she's like, absolutely not. Okay. We do the whole reading. 2 weeks go by. She calls me back and she's like, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, yeah, give it to me. She said I got a refund to the wrong address. I got my daughter's refund. It was sent to me in an envelope at my address. It was the wrong one. And it had everything to do with the family dynamic that we were working on through the chart. So it wasn't this extra little tidbit. You know what I mean? It was like an important tidbit that played forward. So you can start to fine tune these. I'm going to tell you a really personal, vulnerable story about early sobriety. And so I'm 9 years sober. I don't drink alcohol and I don't get drunk on emotions or finances. And that's part of it, right? But in the beginning, I was 3 months sober and I was ready to have a beer and a shot of whiskey and whatever else I wanted. I was ready to go to the bar. I didn't want to be sober anymore. And I was leaving my house and I couldn't get through the door and I could see the red lights, right? And the door, like there's somebody on the other side of my door, and I just stopped and I like slunk down and sat against my door so I could hear. And on the other side, someone had just drank themselves to death. They had been revived. Okay. And the emergency worker on the other side of the door is saying, do you know about the 12 steps? Do you know about recovery? Do you know about the spiritual principles of recovery? And this person in the most vulnerable state of their life, who had just almost died, perhaps did and came back, is getting kind of preached to outside my door, where I'm about to go make maybe not that mistake, but I'm about to get back in that life, right? And my point with this story is their darkest hour is that they will never know the impact they had on me, right? I will never know who that was and call them up and say, guess what? Your worst hour changed my life and the trajectory of it. So when you're giving readings, right, you may never know how you have changed the trajectory of somebody's life. And so you're holding somebody in the palm of your hand. You have a huge amount of integrity to do this work, right? To be in a spiritual position, to be in a karmic position of bringing these questions up to people. Did I weave that together enough, or was it too polka dotty?
It was beautiful and super deep. And so hold on, I wanted to like pick up on this like idea of the karmic relationship because
Yeah.
I think hmm, right. So how do we prevent as the ethics police of the world, how do we prevent like these types of chaotic situations? Because I mean I can imagine how many clients who've had a horrible reading and were traumatized. For me, like I've heard astrologers say things to some clients of mine that were honestly like irreparable.
Mhm.
Like some things like that are unfixable.
Yeah.
Said some words that they will never leave. I have another experience with a very dear friend of mine who for some reason or another at some points in her life, every time when she's a little down or depressed, she becomes psychic addicted. And
Mhm.
so she'll call hotlines, right? Or even have these referrals for these women. And at some point, this one woman, my friend had a friend who committed suicide. And the psychic told my friend that no, it wasn't suicide. It was his mother who had killed him. And so my very impressionable friend, who was very depressed and very lonely at that time, held a grudge on the mother of her friend who had killed himself for a while
Yeah.
and was even possibly rude to her, because
Mhm.
the psychic had said so. And so that karmic relationship, that
Mhm.
this quote, shit, I forgot who said it, but there's an astrologer who says, John Frawley says, keep your dirty boots out of your clients' charts.
Yeah.
And so that idea of like before we're in session, like the first thing to do is take off our boots,
Mhm.
right? And so there's a state that for me is required. So, but I don't know, I'm not the ethical police of the world, right? And what are we gonna do? Are we gonna go check on everyone in the world and be like, are you taking off your boots at the door? Are you taking off? And can we guarantee, like, is there a system that really like helps guarantee this? For me, one trick that I do is that I like to ask questions. I'll try to turn it into a question. I'll
Mhm.
always try to turn it into a question and not make faded statements, you are. I
Mhm.
try are you a lot,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know? That's my way to kind of like trick myself into being as light-footed as possible.
Mhm.
But it's practically impossible to have no impact, or we pray that we have positive impact, but it's um, very important. And so for you, do you think that comes, is that like part of your spiritual practice? Like, how does that come for you? How do,
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's part of my preamble, right? So I'm telling you ahead of time what's going on for me. And I would like how you're saying, like, are you that okay, I'm just gonna give it to you direct. But for me, don't, why are you asking me? Don't you know? Aren't you the one in charge here? Don't ask me. Just, you know what I mean? So I don't teach people to ask questions in that way. What I say is to use your senses, right? Because you're conveying something. So is it that you're having an emotional experience? Are you having a physical experience? Are you hearing something? Does it taste like something? Is there a song that you're reminded of? And then go ahead and say that thing. Like, okay, it feels like this is a really charged situation. Can you understand that? That's the question I'll ask. Can you understand that? Yes or no? And then we'll move in that direction. But if I start with what my experience is of this whole thing, right, then I can't get that wrong and you can't fault me for that. Well, I'm hearing the name John. Okay. Well, I'm seeing John Wayne. Am I supposed to say big Western movie fan? Am I supposed to say initials JW? Am I supposed to say Jupiter and Cancer vibes? You know what I mean? Like, what am I supposed to say with that? Karen Anderson is the best, I'll say, animal communications teacher, and she's so wonderful, and she is a beautiful animal rescue, and her heart is in the right place. And she teaches this lesson too. She said, you know, I saw a red cereal box, and I'm working with a client who's they've lost their dog, and they're like, no. She's like, red cereal box, no. I'm seeing Trix cereal. Her name was Trixie. Now you know what I mean? And so the art of saying the right thing so that the client can be perceptive to it, there's that. But some of that you can rule out with your intention too, right? And so in terms of the ethics police, right, I give that in my preamble. So all walks of life are welcome at my table. I believe in one God, right? I believe like I go through my beliefs and how I connect. So there's nothing scary or supernatural that you don't know that you're not having the experience of as well. And that way, when I'm saying, okay, yeah, I feel this. When I look at your Pluto in your first house, I feel like this, or I'm hearing this song, or I'm seeing this like clairvoyantly, right? So I'm kind of weaving them in together, and people really like that. You know, they like knowing what's going on with you, right? Like your experience.
that's like completely different from how I do things. Because I would
Yeah.
like for me, I would like almost like I try as best as I can to never ever talk about me in the reading. Like
Right?
I try to like even like leave them like not knowing. Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, I was born in Paris and then I lived in Los Angeles and now I live in Montreal." And I'm like, "Not
No, and no, I'm not doing that either. I'm just, as I'm reading, I'm saying this is my spiritual experience
right."
of what's going on,
Is
and can
that
you understand
because
that?
do you think because you have that layer of like it's also too a psychic reading? Do you call it a psychic astrology reading? What do you call it? Or do you just say like solar return and then you'll be like, but your grandma's name was Mary Eva. I don't know.
No, I'll ask, are you open to hearing, right, more from the spirit side? And if so, great. But people are booking with an intention with me. I mean, they know what they're getting. I'm not getting some like random person from Google that found me. It's like I'm a referral type of a person. and or like I have a membership and people work with me, and you know what I mean. So they are coming for a specific reason, and I don't really offer psychic readings, mediumship readings. It's an astrology reading, and more is available, right? And so usually that's something that I feel out with them, or they can put in their forms, to say what they're comfortable with. Because sometimes people aren't comfortable with that, and you just honor that. But the karmic side is I'm just not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you marry him, move here. This is it. I'm saying here's the emotional weather forecast. These are the seasons that you're in right now, right? And they're predictable. And to me, that's like the conversations that I didn't really have with my family, like having a baby, perimenopause, all of the things that happen throughout the stage of a woman's life. They're natural and normal and predictable, and yet variance and nuanced between each person. But that's the life cycles of the soul in astrology too, right? They're nuanced, but they're predictable, and we can look at them and explore them. And that doesn't mean that knowing that it's going to rain tomorrow is going to change, right? It's just knowing kind of the weather. And why do you want to know the weather, right? Like that's another question I have. Like we are supposed to be content in all seasons. So you're in the middle of a season. So then I go to spirit, right? Like what is my highest service of this person who's uncomfortable? And how can I weave in a little bit of emotional recovery? How can I weave in a tool that's going to help this person where they are so that they're not feeling hungry, like that irritability. We're part spirit. We have a natural longing to want to know the skies that we came from. So you know, it's an evolution, and the
Yeah.
way I see things now is not the way I saw them, and I'm sure I'm going to continue to evolve. Just being true to ourselves is how we keep the karma clean, I think.
There's like a question that I have is that you know how like astrology has a rhythm and the rhythm is predictable and cycles are develop all in the same way and seasons and a woman's period and a strawberry plant and everything starts from seed and then cycles are the same everywhere and there is a regularity, a predictability to
Mhm,
astrology. And then to me, it feels like the X factor is so like part divine will. Like, okay, there's that X factor. There's an other, so I don't know if divine will and chaos are the same, but there's another X factor that I call chaos,
mhm,
right? And then another X factor that is free will and like the inner work,
mhm,
right? And
mhm,
so there's those rhythms, and then just like these unpredictables, right, that are thrown in the mix.
mhm,
Um, for me, with astrology, like I only can read the patterns. Although, like because it's not well formed, maybe like in my head, or I'm not trained or something, but sometimes, I'll get hit of intuition. I feel like I'm talking out of my ass and giving an example out of my, just I'm just giving an example, and the person will start crying and be like, "How did
Yes,
you know that was the song that was?" I'm like, I didn't.
yes,
You know
yes.
what I mean? Or I'll say like a word, I'll be like, and like a mango, and they're like, oh my God, mangoes. And you're like, okay. Um, and it does like mean something super specific to them. And I was just talking, but um for me, like, do you have like, okay, so the astrology here, and then you're able to read like another vibration that's at play, i.e., question mark, divine will, question mark, the spirit source like in it that kind do you feel that it kind of like shuffles and moves things around too?
Hmm. I guess I, with my intention, I just trust that the things I get are important for that person at that time and impactful for the person at that time. And just like honey, like each jar has a different flavor. The terroir is different. The way that that plant was grown was different, and the way it was pollinated was different. And that bee has a short life, and so the next bee does it different. The taste is different. There's only going to be that moment in time that we have that reading. So had we had it Tuesday instead of Friday, I would have said something different, perhaps. I would have been infused differently, right? And so I guess I just trust that it's the moment and that what comes out comes out. And I encourage my clients to be surrendered to spirit. I encourage people to get free will. It's like that's a nuanced thing to talk about too, because of course we have free will. Um, of course we have free will. I don't believe that our lives are completely predestined and predetermined with absolutely no choice. The human design system will say no choice, right? So there's lots to explore and play with free will. I'll tell you from my life, when I'm in free will and I'm just doing what I want to do and initiating and like doing the things that Tiffany wants to do, there is very little satisfaction, very little joy, very little fulfillment. If I will wait to respond and be surrendered to what I feel is a higher power flow, that's my joy. That's my satisfaction. There's an element of surrender that is so much greater, right, than anything. Like you guys, we were talking earlier about how I'm a busy person, right? Well, of all those busy things, the things that gives me the eternal contentedness is is when I feel surrendered to a higher plan. Um,
Hmm.
so
Right. And then there's another thought that this is bringing, and I'm sorry if we're getting like really esoteric by the end of this podcast, but this is how we are. We can't. The other thing that I have, this is something that it's funny because in our conversations where we speak a lot about like the nature of God and
yeah.
um what the one wants, and so there's like the one that is all and that is everything all the time. So there's like the oneness that is everything all the time. And then there's the oneness that is one and not the other.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like the oneness, like what I think of is like my cells, all of these cells that I call mine, but that
Mhm.
decide to amass together and create a unit.
Mhm.
Cells kind of love each other in a special way, and they're like, "We're Sarah,"
Right.
right? And we're not Tiff type of thing.
Right.
And like these cells decided, I'm calling myself Tiffany. I'm calling us Tiffany.
Right.
Like the oneness that is in the plural, and then this idea of the longing and of the
Mhm.
yearning from the oneness that is not two to return to the oneness that is all, and
Mhm.
where that conversation is possible.
Mhm.
Like it's like who's talking to whom? It's like you were saying, like who's giving the information? Who's
Yeah.
talking to whom? What is you? What is me? What is the one? What is all of that?
Mhm.
Where it gets kind of like dizzying when we're talking about like astrology and psychic and like what are we reading? Who's reading what?
Mhm.
And so what you were saying at some point is that like your intention, your first like raising hand intention was just to like be about love, like come here and bring more love.
Mhm.
And so like do you feel like this is like a love spiritual practice, like a you God love God people God just lover of divinity, and that's just what you're doing?
I would love for that to be the bottom line. Absolutely. Do I wake up every day and do it well? No. And you unfortunately or fortunately, my friend, get to hear some of my rants because it's a safe place and I know we're contained. I know that I'm not affecting virally something that I've said. I know that we're in this special thread where I can workshop something through, right? But if that was, that if that was what people took away from my life, well lived. You know what I mean? Like that's how I want to feel is like, okay, I ended today and I made a good impact out there. And yet I'm human. This idea of like ethics and who's the ethics police and how do you get the right reading and people affect you. Like, I want to just give a nod to one of my teachers, Lisa Williams, because this was a big passion of hers. I don't know if it still is, but when we were working closely together, she has a CSA program, which is a certified spiritual advisor, and it's so long. And I used to be like, oh my gosh, get me through this. Like, I want to move on. But it's so long because people that come to the healing arts are usually have pretty big hurts themselves. And so it gives you time to see yourself, process yourself. But the whole reason for her program is so that there would be some sort of database of people that were proofed, you know what I mean? That went through some sort of certification program. And because of that, she empowered me to have my own astrology certification program. And I do weave psychic gifts into that. I do weave psychic and astrology into my membership. And I think, there are some basic questions you could be asking your astrologers to understand where they are ethically. But if it doesn't feel right, or if it doesn't feel like a good fit, you're going to know that already in your body. Um, so yeah, who is the one time how do you ask a fish to describe the water that it's swimming in, right? Who is that one? Where does that longing come from? God works in mysterious ways. We're not meant to know it all the time. I'm not designed to know it all. I have an open ajna. If I find myself thinking about things that don't matter, right? I need to redirect myself. So the for me in my life, it's not like scripture or teachers or somebody has said figure out the nature of God, right? The what my directions are understand how to love people, right? Love your enemies. I have somebody that hurt me bad the last month, and it took me 4 or 5 hours to be like, oh yeah, forgive her, pray for her. And do you know I have blessed
You
that woman's
faster
business.
than me. She didn't even hurt me, but it took you faster than me. You were already like on the blessing her. I was like, wait, 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 wait. We don't have to bless her today.
Yeah.
Get
I'm
ready.
like, let her business
Or
prosper.
can we stay mean? Can I stay mean just for give me 24 hours to be like, you're already like praying for her? That 4 or 5 hours though, Tiff, come on. Give me a little bit more time to be a bitch.
Well, and that's why I'm like, thank God Sarah will protect me here because I was like ready to, you know, but that's part of the emotional sobriety program is we stop fighting, right? And when we stop fighting, that means that spirit will step in on our behalf. So if I will just shut up, something will stir her heart or not. I'm no longer attached to the outcome because I'm at peace, right? That I'm protected, that there are no mistakes, and that there are things I can do to recreate or, to do it differently. Um, and yeah, I think these things crop up for our own healing. So I shifted from F you to thank you. It was an eruption. You know what I mean? Like it was a bloody feeling. I felt betrayed by 1800 years worth of betrayal. And this one little thing stimulated so much growth because I could shift out of it, right? So it's like that whole thing, like who are we talking to? Who's talking to us? How do I want to handle my emotional chemistry? You know, it's just we're all just wandering around on this journey of life. Nobody knows how to do it right. We have to do it in a way that we can sleep at the end of the day. I don't know how she sleeps at the end of the day. I'll just say that much. But but I know on my part, I can sleep with my actions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for everyone wa watching, it was a story of like some intellectual property theft. And so that was infuriating. And yeah, but I think it's really interesting. Like I didn't think that that the conversation would lead here with you, but I'm also not surprised
Mm.
because for me, like what I'm hearing is that like what you're saying is that when you're doing a reading, like you're really trying to be channeling as clearly as possible and having the room to deliver the message as they come
Mhm,
and kind of like letting go
mhm.
of what it is and just offering that as it is without interfering too much,
That's it.
you know? That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. And you're just like letting it be without
Yeah.
trying to control it, without trying to even understand it.
Without taking it personally when somebody says, no, that's not me. I mean, you just have to know that you're of service and that you may never get the brownie points. You may never get the call that says you changed my life. You just have to do it without expectation and to deliver as clearly as possible. If this is even your calling, you know what I mean? Like there's so many people that it's not their calling. God, whoever creator, will not let you progress down a path that was not meant for you. So, and we can pivot at any time, right? That's a beauty. We can start our day over at any time and get like our sobriety back at any time. We can start right now with this hour, right? There's so the human experience of free will, right? It's just that's a fascinating topic. But for me, I feel best when I'm surrendered to no expectation of outcome. Now, it's impossible. It's like near impossible for me to read for my friends because I want for you, I expect for you, I dream for you, I vision for you. I want more than you want for yourself for you. For a client, none of that passion and emotion experience is there. I can just sit in front of you, feel the energy, look at the chart, move through something with you, right? And then get to that core message and that core lesson without so much like attachment on what you do with it, because I trust that you were called to me for a reason. So, synchronicity is, I think, a real thing. I think that I attract people with Pluto on their first. I attract people with Jupiter transiting their 10th. I attract people with a lot of death and grief. I attract people with a lot of passion. And that's my chart. That's a reflection of my chart, right? So you're for somebody. Your chironic message medicine, right, is for somebody. And you don't have to be the best astrologer in the world to give somebody a little taste of your medicine if you're sharing, right, from your experience, strength, and hope and some data, right? You're being of service and the world needs you. There's a lot of hurting people. There's a lot of people in chaos and confusion that need you to be the most spiritual person in the room, right? So that doesn't mean that you have to be perfect all the time, but yeah, Lee, like whew, there's a need for healers, for readers, for people to interpret things through a spiritual lens, to ask the questions in the chart and let them interpret it. So there's enough to go around. That's all I'm saying. You don't have to be the best astrologer and study for 25 years to have medicine to give. You have your own experience, right?
I think that's really powerful. Like if you like, because one of my question is like if you could give an advice to younger astrologers or to people who want a career path such as yours, like what would it be? And so that sounds like one of them.
Mhm. Yeah, that's one of them. I'm gonna I have a couple of quotes. I think this was a good time to pull them out. Okay, so the question is about like basically what would you tell your younger astrologer self, or what would you tell somebody on the path that's
Yeah.
wanting to go in this direction? One is to declare that I will no longer participate in my own suffering. Oh, that's so good, So
Well,
just declare that. Start there and don't participate in your own suffering one more hour if you can, right? Who expand your perimeter of possibility, who believe in your potential just a little bit more than your reality. Move toward the people who remind you of the person you know you're meant to be, the ones who stretch your soul and make you feel something real. Move toward the people who remind you of what you contain, who help you fall a little more with life. Move toward the people who energize you more than they drain you. Duh. These little signs are not so little. They're markers of our soulmates in all the forms that they come. Um,
Beautiful.
So there's more, but I'll stop there. This is the Pivot Year. It's by Brianna Wiest, Deborah Carter Masolato, who was my first friend in that astrology class that took me under her wing. She's an older Scorpio, older than I, Scorpio, and she taught me many things. She said, you need somebody older than you that's your same sun sign to help you navigate. They understand you, right? And so I feel like that's a pro tip as well. So in addition to moving towards the people that help you see your own potential, study under somebody that's kind of like that understands your shadow side. Um, but I think you can be of service right where you are. You don't have to have a certification. You don't have to have the right class. You don't have to be in the cool girls club. You don't have to have the library, right? You have to have a heart of service and a willingness to surrender to something greater that's wanting to happen through you on behalf of the tribe of humanity. And with that, you can serve. So that said, can I caveat with you also don't have to blast out every little thing you know about the lunar cycle. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so much trashy astrology accounts out there that make something appear more than is there. So I would say be authentic with where you are and what you know. But 20-year-old Tiff was taking clients. Why can't you? Right? And I did I do it perfect? No. Would I say the same thing? No. But God, to me, in my perspective, brought me somebody, and what I say to my clients is medicine for me too, right? So it's like double win situation. After every single uh, practice session or paid session that you offer, go back to spirit, go to your prayers, go to your meditation, and ask, was that good for you? What can I do better? How can I improve myself?
It's
You
fascinating
know?
because last time the episode 2 episodes before you is Jessica Lanyado, and she was saying how for her it is not a spiritual practice, astrology. And this is something I've heard her say before and that we've spoken about before, and it's something that doesn't resonate with me. Like it's it's part of my spiritual belief. Like it's not my religion. Not my religion. Okay, we all know I'm Jewish, whatever. But also astrology is not my religion. Like it's really my where I place a lot of beliefs and understanding, morals, values. A lot of my things are in that. And I cannot for me, the same way that somebody would say everything is political, for me deeply, I think everything is spiritual.
Mhm.
Everything. There is not an area of light that of life that is not completely miraculous and mystical, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
so whatever we do, we can do with purpose.
Hmm.
Whatever, even if it's the dishes, even if it's a conversation.
Exactly. You can
So
do it with devotion, anything.
anything, you can
Yeah.
invite spirit into any conversation that you're
Yes.
anything can be a practice of you being in conversation with spirit all the time,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so if you can, so to your point, you don't have to be the most famous Instagram astrologer. You don't have to have 50,000 followers to be of worth of anything. Even if you're not certified, even if you don't practice, even if you're not taking money. Sometimes one conversation, even if it's not about astrology,
Hmm.
like just these things of like planting a seed of hope, of love, of goodness, of perspective, of reflection, of relief in
Hmm.
someone's field is great work. And then if that becomes your profession, and then if it becomes your profession, then that's when for me you need to be your own little ethics police. Check
Hmm.
yourself, know your own shadow things, know where you are in your positions of power, how your ego gets when it gets triggered. Like, really be familiar with all the ways that you could fuck this up.
Right.
Like
Hmm.
that's part of the responsibility. Like I need to know all the ways that I could mess somebody up just so that I can li- prevent it, right? So I
Hmm.
want to even be careful of me. Sorry, be careful of me, not only to protect me, but to protect people from me in a way.
Hmm.
But I cannot separate that from anything and from all of from everything which is to me of spiritual nature, definitely.
Yeah, same. And we're all different. There's not like a right one of us. Like one of us isn't right. It's just that we're going to attract those types of clients, right? That have that similar or want to have an understanding of that belief system, right? It's
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that leads us to like the beautiful question. I don't know, were you familiar with the show Inside the Actor Studio?
Well, I mean, you had mentioned that when you were dreaming this
Okay.
podcast up, but no.
So basically, they had I don't know what James Lipton did. He had a beard and glasses, but he was interviewing all these actors about their process, about how they did, about, all of these conversations we just had, but for actors. And then he would ask them these questions that come from a writer, a French writer named Proust, and it's the Proust questionnaires. And it's like questions like, what is your favorite sound? What is, like stuff like that. But the last
Okay.
question of the questionnaire I really love, and I want to ask it to you. It goes, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Uh, okay.
That's the question of the studios.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, well done is what I want to hear. Like I'm crying. But that's what I want to hear, like, well done.
Yeah. Yeah, and that speaks to me, that speaks about your intention to do well
Hmm.
for God, that you are really
Yeah.
like that person who's here to serve and to do your work, and you want
Hmm.
your boss to tell you that mission accomplished and a pat on the back, and you can go back and you raised your hand. Very beautiful.
Yeah. What do other people say? Like, I like, what's another answer? I want to know that I did my best. I
Okay.
want to,
Yeah, welcome home.
oh, yeah.
I don't know if somebody said nice try, but nice try. No, yeah, people have different, yeah, I'd have to go, I have to go remember, but I know that the last one was welcome home.
I love that.
Hmm.
That's a great one. Yeah, I think I still feel good about well done. I want to know that I there wasn't anything more I could have done. You know what I mean? I want to know that the impact was of was worth to my creator, right? We have a slogan in recovery that says God is my employer, and that's how I feel. So it doesn't matter what I do. If astrology dries up because it's so weird right now and the world's upside down, and like if I'm just gonna be, whatever. If I'm insert topic and that's my form of income, right? I can do that with a devotional heart. That's the bhakti yogi side of me, and still feel like I'm just doing this to be of service to the highest God. And if I'm doing that, then I'm on track. But if I'm in my little Tiffany personal emotional drama, right, like ways, then and I'm not doing that, like that, I guess that's how I feel out of alignment. So
That's when you think that God would say, 39 projects, Tiff? I can't imagine
right,
you didn't do 43.
right,
You
right.
know?
And the thing is, like, none of us really even know. So if you have a psychic, an astrologer, somebody that you're going to for counseling that knows, everything about how the spiritual life works and the afterlife and how God is and all of it. And then they know. I'm like, nobody knows. So a red flag for me. If you are with somebody who is chasing spirit, who is in love with spirit, who is in divine mystery, who's steeped in the essence of it, like those, that's what I'm curious about. Like that's my heart. That's who I want to play with. Right? Like it's because nobody really, because if we knew, we wouldn't even be having these talks, right? Like we would just do our little duties like ants marching.
Exactly, and the mystery is part of the game.
Yeah.
It's it's like part of the code down here is the mystery,
Right.
you know? So yeah, I'm with
Yeah.
you with that. And but I love what you had said about like the clients finding the right person and like you announcing from the get-go, like, this is who I am. Are we a match? You know?
Mhm.
I love that. Thank you so much, Tiffany. This was really, really, really great. I'm so glad we had this conversation. It showed me a lot more about the way you work. Like, even though we know each other so much, like it really let me like see the way that your mind is designing all of these things. And I can't wait to continue watching what you create and supporting your work. I want to tell everybody to absolutely, absolutely get the calendar. We're at the beginning of the year. It's the most amazing tool. I have a code. My code, you know it by heart. It's RAR
RAR. Yes.
20
RAR 2025.
RAR 2025, which will get you
I think it's $15 off.
$15 off, which is amazing. And I mean, I use mine every day. I really think it's like the best tool for astrologers and not astrologers alike, because you have like descriptions for everything that are so easy to understand and really beautifully written. All your work you can find on your website, tiffanyharelik.com.
Mhm.
You'll see that there's many things to dive into. So I'm really excited for that, for everybody to know a little bit more about you. And thank you so, so much.
Oh, Sarah, thank you. It's been my pleasure. Such a treat. I've been looking forward to this, and yeah, I love what you're doing. It's a huge legacy project, and it's so valuable. So thank you for spending the time asking the questions, guiding the conversations, and to everybody watching, just sending you guys so many blessings on your spiritual adventure, on your journey with astrology. Hopefully we've given you some awesome questions to ask yourself, and thank you for the time to do it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Bye, everyone.